Perfect. So what's going on, y'all? Welcome to another episode of NJ Healthy Heat. Today I have Thomas St. Clair. He's a former professional baseball player with the St. Louis Cardinals organization. He's also currently a pitching coach and was a former pitching coordinator within the Texas Rangers organization. He's going to talk to us about his path from high school all the way to pro baseball, and then what he's doing right now in professional baseball as a coach on the pitching side to help his players get better. So if you're at home listening to this, get a pen and paper. There's going to be a ton of value in this conversation, and we look forward to bringing it to you. So, Thomas, can you take us back to your high school days and talk to us about what the recruitment experience was like? I think that's where a lot of questions come from the guys in college right now is what does that recruitment process look like? And just give us, your story from high school to getting to the college that you went to.
Yeah, so it's way different now. I'll touch on that a little bit, but I started high school in 2000 and 2008, 2009, and and coming out of middle school, we didn't have a baseball team, so you didn't really know where you stacked up as far as what the competition was in your area. Uh, when I came into high school, I definitely didn't have a position that I focused in, or I wasn't a PO, I wasn't a shortstop. I was just trying to make the team. I started off as JV my freshman year, mostly played outfield. Really struggled with hitting. Moved into kind of my summer season. There wasn't travel ball, wasn't as big as it was. We had what was called American Legion, and they had a junior Legion team. And on that junior Legion team, I got some opportunities to pitch and had arm strength. Definitely had no idea what I was doing. And then that turned around to where my sophomore year, I threw hard enough to make the varsity team and had some success. And then I pretty much just played American Legion baseball up through my sophomore and junior year, and played varsity as a pitcher only. Uh, and then where kind of things took off for me recruiting wise was I got invited to play for a team based out of Charlotte the summer going into my senior year, that had a lot of kids that were either already committed to colleges to attend or were being heavily recruited to colleges to attend, and was able to go to events like East Cobb and in Georgia, Marietta, Georgia. We went down to Jupiter, Florida, played in those events. I honestly really did not get any interest from schools throughout that whole summer. I was exposed to the college coaches, but there wasn't any that necessarily were interested in me. And then my senior year of high school, there was a kid on a team across the county that was going to Catawba, which is in the South Atlantic Conference, which Lenore Ryan, where I attended, was in, and got a ended up getting a scholarship to go to Lenore Ryan. The coaches were there at a game one night and saw me pitch. So once I got my first offer, I ended up having multiple Division II offers. I think probably the biggest opportunity I had was a walk-on spot at Appalachian State and Charlotte, and ended up deciding to go to Lenore Ryan. But I was probably, I don't know, 5'9", 5'10" at best, and 145 pounds soaking wet. I had never really been exposed to a weight room. I had never been exposed to conditioning. I did not know anything about long toss. So it was really just kind of some raw ability. Now I will say with that, like, baseball was my focus. I mean, my dream from being a little kid was to play baseball in college. But at the time, I just did not know what things to involve myself in. There wasn't Twitter, or travel ball was not anywhere near what the scene that it is now. And then, between being lucky and being in the right time, right spot, the right time in front of some coaches, and my college or my high school coach helping me get some people in front of me, I did not have many opportunities. And I committed to Lenore Ryan for coaches that were actually they were fired the summer going into my freshman year of college baseball, and new coaches took over. So I stuck through it and got to Lenore Ryan, and that's college is definitely where my career took off and things changed for me. But if I could go back and do high school, man, I would have been posting on Twitter every single day, and I would have been trying to play travel ball for sure.
Yeah, no, that's great. We'll get into that. I think the question that most people are probably going to ask, that I'll just go ahead and ask, is in high school, where were you at on the velo scale, and how important do you think that was in, the decision making process from schools to give you an offer or not?
I would say probably everything. I was going to walk a bunch of people. I did not throw many strikes. I was probably in that like 87 to 90 mile per hour range. There were not radar guns around a ton at that time. I do remember, though, a couple of games my senior year topping at 90, 91, when just asking people that were scouts that were at the game after what they had on their radar gun. So I had the ability to throw hard. It was pitchability that I was lacking in. And yeah, I mean, velocity's king, velocity's everything. So it's the number it's the number one indicator of success, as some people would say.
Yeah. And so, what do you feel like were the biggest challenges that you faced in high school as a pitcher who was trying to get recruited? I think you alluded to some of it. Was it the strength and conditioning? Was it the size? Was it the lack of, ability to throw strikes, or kind of a combination of all three?
I would say the size from, a Division I scale. I threw much harder than probably half the guys in my area that were going to a Division I school. Those guys obviously had physicality, were over 6 foot, 6'1", and over 180 pounds. So they probably projected those guys to play more, or to have more growth. But I mean, I don't think pitchability from a young kid's standpoint, if you're in middle school, if you're in high school, I would directly focus on velocity. I've never heard a college coach see a guy throw 93 miles per hour and worry about that the ball was not in the strike zone. And then I would just say overall exposure. I mean, there's just so many ways now to put yourself out there. You don't really even need to be on a team necessarily to do that if you have Twitter or Instagram, and they have Game Changer and things of those sorts. So, exposure and physicality, I would say the two things that held me back the most.
Okay. And so, when we move out of high school and we start talking about your college career, what advice would you give to younger Thomas, if you could go back and do it, if you could go back and do high school again?
Eat as much as you can, lift as much as you can, long toss as much as you can.
Nice. And so once you joined LR, what were some of the adjustments you had to make going from high school to college baseball?
A million. I had no idea how to play the game. I did, that was the first time I'd seen a high level practice be run where there's pitcher specific practice that is isolated. Then you're moving into PFPs. Then you're moving into a full team practice. Then you have lifting after. So there's time management aspects of that as well. Having a routine for yourself in general, and one that's specific to you. Understanding that everything's got to be individualized, and what that means for yourself, and then being able to not necessarily worry so much what guys are doing around you, but just to focus on yourself. So I had to learn how to play baseball. I had to learn how to do everything except being part of a team. I had to learn how to pitch. I had to learn what mechanics were. I had to learn lingo of the game, and I had to learn how to meet coaches' demands. So there was a million things. I was so far behind when I got to college. I mean, it's amazing how I even got through it. But you're able to hit the ground running, and you go over the obstacles. But yeah, it was tough.
And so you get into college, you're a little undersized, you're still throwing velocity. So how do you go from a guy who's a little undersized, has a little bit of velocity, really no pitch ability, to ultimately getting drafted? How does that happen in a 4 year span? What are some things that you can look back and say, like, it's this? Obviously, it's you can't pinpoint one
Yeah.
exact thing, but what are some big things?
Number one thing was just mechanics. I had a really late arm action that caused a lot of inconsistencies of velocity, being able to throw strikes, pitch shape, breaking ball changeup, etc. And then foundational strength. So I kind of think I battled the first 2 years trying to work maybe somewhat too much on times on mechanical efficiency when I didn't necessarily have foundational strength that was going to keep that consistent. If I go back, I probably would have just focused mostly on strength my first 2 years and then worried about my mechanics a little bit more. And then the third part of it was just learning how to play the game. You know, once you have everything set in the weapon, you still got to be able to hide around the corner and crouch down and do all those things that it takes to win. So the game slowed down a lot once I learned how to, do all the pickoff plays, how to do bunt defense, understand what the other team was going to try to do, what batters were going to do in situational moments. So just learning the game, and once I learned the game, I thought that's what gave me instincts of the game. So yeah.
And so, how does one go about learning that? Is there a way that you went about it, or is it just in-game reps over and over? Is there studying that goes on, watching videos? What are some things that somebody can do to get better at those things?
I think the number one thing that you can do, and the number one thing that helped me the most was Wise pitching coach used to always make starting pitchers chart games. And charting the game was that's where you've got the paper and it's got the little script of the field on there, and you're writing in the boxes what the pitches were, what the batter did on each of those pitches, where the ball went, and if an out was recorded, a hit, whatever it may be. And you start to learn through that, just what's going on throughout the game. And then the biggest part of it is really just talking to your teammates. I mean, guys like you, guys like Wes McGuire, Nick Flashowski, guys that had been at either JUCO baseball or been around the college game for a couple of years, that had a really good idea of what was going on and how the game was being played. Constantly asking them questions about what to do and why that was happening. And for me, it was also not being scared and understanding that there aren't any dumb questions, and that it's better to know now than get out there, be on the mound and not know. And that I think that, like, it doesn't happen. That's the biggest thing that doesn't happen overnight, and you're not going to learn the game overnight. The game is ever changing, and it's kind of the last piece of the puzzle. But just almost, can you be a fan especially if you're a pitcher? You think about it in college, you're playing you're playing 4 or 5 games a week, and you're only pitching in one of them. Professional baseball, you're playing 6 games a week. If you're a starter, you're only pitching in one of them. So you've got to learn how to watch the game those other 5 nights, or those other 4 nights.
And so, not that we need to go too deep on this, but I think that that's something interesting because for those of us that are like real big fans of the game, we don't mind watching the game of baseball. We understand what our role is and we understand how to play it. And, there's certain aspects that come along with it, like having to sit on the bench and watch it. For those who are listening, that maybe aren't, playing every day, but have the opportunity to be around the game and watch it, what advice would you give to them that they can take to continue to grow, even though that they're not necessarily contributing to the game right then and there?
Dive in as much as you can, and find a way to get yourself involved in that game. The number one thing that comes to mind is a teammate, Trip Hamrick, that, I mean, he was best known, and his biggest input on the team was he was constantly able to pick the other team signs. He knew, when they were going to throw something soft, when they were going to throw something hard. He have figured out by the fifth inning what they were trying to do, when they were trying to steal, if they were going to bunt. So just finding those areas where you can get yourself put in the game. Another thing I think you can do that I wish I would have thought of, but I've seen multiple players do over the last couple of years, is during the game, guys will just stand by the pitching coach. and ask them, what pitch do you have here? Or would you bunt in this situation? Would you throw a slider in this situation, et cetera, whatever it may be. Uh, that's where you're going to have open conversation. That conversation is going to lead to other conversations. So finding a way to make yourself feel involved in the game. You can have input. You can help your team or your teammates do better when still on the bench or still in the dugout.
No, that's a great take there, and I love that. So after a successful career at Lenore Ryan, you end up going and setting a school record for strikeouts in a single season. You start to get some notoriety. You start to get picked up on the MLB radar. Talk to us about what that process is like.
Yeah, that started. I turned 21 at the end of my sophomore year. So we had a pro day each year where scouts would come and you would throw a bullpen in front of them. And I'd always got the letters and the questionnaires. I'm not sure if those are even still a thing now, but where you would fill out your information and scouts would talk to you about, what would it look like for you to sign? Would you want money? Are you looking for an opportunity? They dive into your character, all of those things, etc. It mostly came down to a mix of, the tools will get you noticed and the tools will get you on people's radars. And then there's got to be a certain level of performance to match that generally to get you selected. So my sophomore year and my junior year were kind of a mix of the first half was excellent, the second half wasn't. My senior year, I was able to put it together, and that's when I was able to. I was drafted in like the 20th or the 24th round. My senior year out of college, and I didn't have any leverage, so it's not like they're asking you what kind of money you want to go for. You're signing for an opportunity to go play. But yeah, I mean the tools get you noticed, and there's got to be a level of performance. With the scouts, I mean the biggest thing that you go through is interviews where they're going to ask you a numerous amount of questions of everything of your family life, your aspirations, your intentions, your character. I mean, you're going to get asked questions that you have no idea why someone in baseball would ask you. I remember always the biggest one with the Cardinals was if there was three guys in a room, or excuse me, if there was three guys in a room and then they would tell you just, three random names, who would you want to have dinner with and why? And generally, you've been asked the question, like if you could have dinner with any famous person or celebrity, whatever. And this is just a list of random names. Which guy do you want to have dinner with? What purpose that got out of? I don't know. Maybe if I had chosen Robert over Chris, I would have gone earlier. But so now looking back at that though, I guess that's something that I wish I would have prepped for a little bit. You're constantly focused on the baseball side of it and what you're showing them on the field, but your communication skills, your ability to interview, your ability to answer questions, all of those things are being taken into account. So it's a rigorous process. It's a really, really fun process. It's a joyful process. And then, until I was drafted, which was like pick 700 and something, I watched every single pick of the draft. And it ended up working out. But yeah, I mean, it's a process you want to be prepared for, but you want to make sure you're enjoying it as well.
Yeah, it's tough to enjoy it like that, though. That's for
Absolutely. Yeah.
So after all of that, you ended up getting signed and you ended up hearing your name called in the draft. Obviously, every kid who's listening to this and every parent listening to it, that's the ultimate goal. Doesn't matter if you go pick number one or you go the last pick of the draft. The goal is to get there and at least give yourself an opportunity.
Yeah.
Once you get that opportunity, what were the biggest eye-opening differences between college baseball and professional baseball?
The physicality overall of the players. It's a really, really fast game. You hear all the time, like, well, no one bunts in professional baseball. No one, does these small ball, or maybe you would call things you would turn or deem fundamental parts of the baseball game. And That is true. A large part of that is the ability separation. If a guy's got ability to hit 40 doubles a year, you're probably not going to ask that guy to bunt. And where I was coming from, you're not necessarily facing a lineup that's got 4 or 5 guys in it that maybe have that ability. Overall, I would say the number one thing was my senior year, I was probably 92, 94, and then you'd touch your, 95 and 96s in the first couple innings. And I thought I threw hard. And, for Division II baseball and probably college baseball in general at that time, I did throw hard. When you get to professional baseball, you're competing against players from across the world. And, there was more guys that threw 95 plus. I mean, guys that their average velocity was what I was topping at consistently each time out. And so, I was nowhere close to being one of the hardest throwers, or, I was probably right at average. So, I had to learn to pitch a whole new way. In college, you're a power pitcher with velocity, and now I'm going to up breaking ball usage. I'm going to up changeup usage. I had to add a cutter. And so, the it's so funny to me with velocity, and you hear now so much about how velocity is everything, and it is, but it's such a funny trick to me because it's, velocity is how you get recruited, velocity is how you get drafted. Well, the last 3 years in Major League Baseball, we have thrown more off-speed pitches than fastballs. And so the reason that is because they want high velocity guys, because high velocity guys have power off speed stuff. And so you spend so long chasing velocity, and then as you get to the pinnacle of the game, it almost becomes full circle and works back to where you have to be able to utilize other tools and things that might have been your weakness in the past, or something you necessarily didn't work on as much because you were chasing velocity at those times, ended up to be able to get output on other things. And so, you know, pitchability, all of it all comes back. But yeah, that was a tangent. But the velocity was the biggest thing that I noticed, and I realized immediately I was going to have to learn to pitch with a different strategy than I had in college.
Yeah. So you're mentioning velocity a lot, and I think that's, something that we're going to talk about probably a good amount on this call, with your expertise in not only being able to throw hard, but now working with guys who throw, exceptionally hard. What are, for guys who are in high school and college who are listening to this, like what are some of the most effective strategies that you've, seen have success when it comes to gaining velocity, and not just gaining velocity, but gaining velocity in a healthy manner? Do you believe in, short-term velocity programs? Is it a sellout and all you can get out of it is just velo or nothing? Or is it a long, play over a couple of years? Like what do you think about when you're trying to talk about, velocity to a kid?
Yeah, I would say the number one thing is there's nothing you're going to develop is going to be a linear progression. And so when it comes to velocity, anything that's short term is probably not healthy for you. Now, with that being said, the number one thing that I've seen increase people's velocity is strength. And especially for guys that don't have foundational strength, you will see them, if you've never lifted before and then all of a sudden you're in the weight room 3 to 4 times a week, you are going to get drastically stronger in a short period of time, which are going to show some peaks in velocity, or show some increased velocity in a shorter amount of time. So it's strength is everything, and without it, you're not going to be able to, one, make the increases that you're wanting to make, or hold that over a consistent amount of time. I would say strength is the engine, and your mechanics are the brakes. Strength's going to be what accelerates the car, what makes you be able to fly around the quarters and drift without going off the road, accelerate really fast. Delivery is going to be your health and efficiency. Once you're strong, there's a lot of ways to create velocity, but you've got to figure out mechanically what that is for you, and everyone's mechanics are different. There's, if you compared me and De La's mechanics, they would be nothing alike. De La's probably 2 feet taller than me and weight, and he surely got strength on me. mean, now he had strength on me big time in college. But for everyone, it's about finding out what those individual mechanics are. So if you're young and you don't have velocity and you're working on velocity, I would not worry too much about your delivery at the moment. I would spend a lot of time just making athletic throws and playing athletic catch play and make all your focus on nutrition in the weight room. Now, once you get to that, whatever you deem throwing hard is, I would say probably once you get to, if you're 18 years old plus and you're throwing 90 miles per hour or harder, that's when I would say it's time to turn and start looking at your delivery. And then, it's not hard to figure out in the sense of if you're throwing and it doesn't feel good and you're having discomfort and pain, that's probably not the way that your body is meant to throw. So, just once those things happen, you see a lot of guys. I mean, I see it all the time. Well, my bicep or my tricep, and then they take some time off and then they do a throwing program to get back and it immediately comes back up. So there's got to be some form of training where you are changing your mechanics.
And so, what does one do? First off, I think one of the things that is an art for every baseball player is understanding how to listen to your body, right?
Yep.
And understanding the difference between sore and injury and actual pain. Shout out Evan Wise on here, our pitching coach in college. One of the things that is burned into my head is you don't get to tell somebody that you're sore until you've gone through a full on, warm up and rollout routine and gotten your arm, and body prepared to throw that day. I think that's a huge piece in all of that. And then, when you talk about trying to switch up your mechanics, let's say that something is wrong in your arms, because I think everybody who pitches or who's on this call and pitching, like, has probably gone through some form of discomfort when throwing. What are some of the steps that you would recommend taking to maybe, I guess, figure out or switch how they're throwing with that
Yeah.
discomfort?
Well, I mean, to me, being sore is a must. And I would say sore is the privilege of having good movement patterns, having an efficient delivery. Discomfort and pain is obviously a consequence of not having those things. Um, so if you're having discomfort and pain, I mean, one, I would calm down. The biggest thing is, hold the ball out in front of you and drop it and just relax. There's no reason to push through pain. And if you're not pitching in Game 7 of the World Series tonight, college or the professional level, it's too much of a risk. And there's so many resources now. Go get, call Daylaw, call whoever. I guess that'd be a good drop in right there, right? You use NJ Healthy Heat.
There you go.
Um,
I think a lot of people know me as
but
big.
utilize resources. That was one thing even when I was coming up through high school that you couldn't just call, you couldn't go down the road to a facility where a pitching coach was. In my area, there was not a ton of those resources. Years later, Wake Forest, the college in Winston-Salem, has a biomechanics lab that you can go to. So, find those resources. And then I would honestly say too, even with those resources, like you you've got to go to those resources and you've got to find the one that you trust. You've got to find the people that actually help you get those things better. You don't want to just do something to do it. You want people that can tell you the why, the how, and the when. Um, so you use resources. You're going to need a coach. You're going to need a trainer. It's an absolute must. Even if you're a Major League Baseball player, you need someone that is overseeing all of your training, especially for your delivery.
And so now that you're a pitching coach with the Rangers and you work with like these elite athletes all the time, right? I think everybody who's listening to this call hopefully wants to be a professional athlete. What are some of the biggest common, traits that you see in these guys who are having success at the highest level?
Well, you may speak on that from an ability standpoint or more what they do physical wise, like their delivery and those things.
I think let's go both. What do you see from a
Okay.
physical standpoint? Like what jumps off the page at you? And then from a pitching standpoint, why are they able to have so much success? The guys that are, on a fast track to the big leagues, and a guy like Matt De La Rosa who, got told to find a new career. What's the difference there?
Yeah. So the number one thing back to it would be velocity. I mean, the average fastball right now in the big leagues is 95 miles per hour, especially for a right-handed pitcher. I'm really not coming across many of them that aren't at that 94, 95 mile per hour uh, mark range. The other thing would be from I think, a metric standpoint, extension. So guys that have the ability to release the ball close to home plate. Uh, the average in the big leagues right now is around 6.5 feet, which that's pretty good. You essentially, you think about it, most guys' extension is somewhere around their height. And so, you're talking about guys that are 6'1", 6'2", that are able to release the ball closer to home plate than they are in height. Really stable back legs, really stable lead legs, and strong cores. And then really, really, really fast rotators, guys that are able to turn their trunk, turn their core, internally rotate their hips, turn their hips towards home plate at violent speeds. And then these guys, the number one thing that I can probably think of that separates all of them is their ability to break, their ability to decel, right? There's a 90-degree turn in the road, and they can go up to it, drift, and stop without having to stop, turn the left blinker on, and then go again. So uh, that's eccentric stuff. That's stuff that you get in squatting. That's stuff you get in any kind of plyometric. That's stuff that you get in a deadlift. And they're able to do those things, but they're all able to throw hard. And then they have, most of them probably have a solid breaking ball or an average to above average breaking ball pitch where they're coming from before. So but I mean, it comes back to it. They all throw hard. They all throw ridiculously hard. It blows my mind how hard they throw. They throw harder than they did 5 years ago. And yeah, I mean, it's velocity has become king in this game.
Nice. I'm going to ask one more question, but while I'm asking questions, if y'all have questions, we're going to get to the question and answer after this. Go ahead and start putting them in the chat so that we can start answering these while he answers this last question, then we'll get to them. So my last question for you is just kind of when you look back on your journey from high school ball to college to the pros to coaching a college team to now, coaching at the professional level, what are the biggest pieces of advice that you would give to number one, players, and then number two, parents?
For players, man, I think it's just be true to yourself. You've got to understand that you have, passions and dreams for this game. I was obsessed with Pedro Martinez growing up. But the reality of me becoming Pedro Martinez was very low. And I think with that, you have to understand that that doesn't mean that you're a bad pitcher. That doesn't mean that you're not a great pitcher. For many guys, it doesn't mean that you're not going to play in the big leagues. But if you spend your whole career chasing who Pedro Martinez was, you're never going to figure out who you are as a pitcher and who you are as a person. And I think with that too for players is success is such a small part of what you're going to do your entire career. You could play 10 years in the big leagues. There's multiple guys that play 10 years in the big leagues, and 4 of those, they have a 4.5, 5 ERA plus. And so it's about staying true to the process inside and out of that. Success is going to be there for a small amount of time. And when it comes, you enjoy it, you rejoice in it. And this one thing that I'll steal from Everett Wise that he spoke to us a ton back to the game is, you love baseball because you fall in love with the process of trying to get better at what you are and what you're doing. And so you can't forget that at times. Like, this is all about chasing who we think we are and what the best version of ourselves is. The beautiful thing is we don't know what that is. And if we knew, it would not be that fun, right? If they just told you at 4 years old that you're going to be Nolan Ryan, well, the journey's not worth anything. So for parents, I think it's just calm down. I mean, I see so much from talking to travel ball coaches about, this pay for play and all the crazy stories that I hear about it. I can tell you I've never coached a player who was great that didn't have a true love for this game. And I truly don't think that anyone can input or push that love into you. So just support them as much as you can, be there for them, reassure them when they need it, but also tell them the truth when they need it, because the the reality is that majority of us aren't Nolan Ryan or Pedro Martinez. And if we're constantly told that, we might have a misconception of ourselves when we get to a level where maybe there's a guy in that group who is. So just support them. It's supposed to be fun. That's the whole point of this. It's supposed to be fun. And if it's not fun, then I'm not really sure what it's worth anyways.
Yeah. No, that's great answers, man. I really appreciate you sharing your journey. I think that a lot of people hopefully got a ton of information from that, and maybe are able to take some of your journey and implement it into their own life and see the different avenues that there are. That's essentially what we're always trying to do, is just show as many people as many different paths to get to, the ultimate goal. I mean, you're now, I think, the third or fourth guy that I brought onto these calls for the guys who are in the program that have seen, the pro guys come through here. And it's just, everyone takes a different path. Everybody wishes they could go back and do it in a different way. But hopefully, these parents and players are getting that information from you. So next question that we have. So again, put your questions in the chat. And we'll get to them. So the first question is, how do you reset yourself after a tough situation? So I think this one's going to be interesting because, I want you to answer it from your point of view, how you helped yourself. And then, when you're in a tough situation in the game now as a pitching coach, what are you telling, your player on the mound?
For me, it was all about having a focal point. I used to like to use the left field flag or foul pole, just because every single park we played at was going to have a left field foul pole. And so essentially, in a tough situation, I would step off, just kind of stare at that foul pole and take a deep breath. And I would allow myself to be upset until the next batter got in the box. So if I gave up a 3-run home run, I was allowed to be as pissed off as I wanted to be. As soon as the next guy got into the box, it was all about putting everything I had on that pitch. As a pitching coach, I mean, normally those are situations where guys are going to be a little bit worked up. They might be mad. They might be upset. They could be a little bit flustered and down on themselves. So I think the biggest thing in that moment is about being reassuring. And it might be reassuring in reassuring them, their abilities on the mound. It might be reassuring them in, what kind of player they are. It might be reassuring them in the confidence that they need to have for that moment. But it's going to be a supportive talk. I'm going to be calm. I'm going to be, cool and collected. I'm not going to be upset or whatever it may be. And it's probably going to be in with detailed talking about what we're going to do with this next batter, try to get their mind off what just happened and get their mind into the future and what they need to do.
Nice. Next question here. What muscles do you need to strengthen to throw harder? And so I think that I'll help narrow this down, because, every muscle in the body is used to throw a baseball. It's a full body movement. What muscles, I guess, do you think are the biggest drivers in the velocity equation?
That's a great question. I'll take the easy way out a little bit, but I would say the core is probably the one that's not talked as much about as much now as it was a couple of years ago. But your abductors and adductors, so all the muscles that are on the outside and inside part of your legs, and then your shoulders and scaps. So I'd almost break it down in 4. You've got your legs, your core, and then you've got your shoulder and your scaps.
And then I'm a big fan, for anybody that cares. I'm a big fan of medicine balls. Throw the hell out of some medicine balls
Yeah.
and as hard as you can, as far as you can, different weights, as fast as you can, bigger medicine balls, quick medicine ball. Lighter medicine balls, all of that stuff. Throw some medicine balls. Next question here. How did you gain weight? You mentioned in college that you started to put on and stack on some size from eating. Talk us through how that came to be.
I did mine purely just from a calorie count. So I went online and they had a body mass, BMI, body mass index calculator. And essentially back then it would show you if you wanted to gain weight, it would multiply whatever the average amount of calories suggested for a person at your height and weight were. And it would multiply that by, I believe, 1.5. And so the summer going into my senior year, I stayed at school, and then throughout the fall of my senior year, I was probably taking in 6 to 8,000 calories a day. And the biggest way I would do that was adding a meal. I was never a big breakfast eater, and so the number one thing I did was added breakfast. And then towards the end of that summer, I started just doing the regular protein and creatine that you get at GNC. Make sure that you get check with whatever league you're in and get the NSF certified ones. And that was a really easy way to add calories into it. And then with that, I was not a super big vegetable guy. And so that was a really easy way that things, even into pro ball, I would use, where you could add kale, you could throw fruits in there. I really wish I realized sooner that if you put protein and bananas and a milkshake, you really cannot taste anything else inside of it. So it kind of turned in a way to almost adding a meal where you could get vegetables and other nutrients of the tree in there. But yeah, just adding a bunch of calories, eating more calories than I was exhausting each day.
Protein shakes work. Drink them.
Oh yeah.
A question here. This one's going to be interesting. Shout out John. His question is, why do coaches want to throw a guy who throws harder but can't find the strike zone versus a guy who doesn't throw as hard but can locate? Why is that something? Why is that something that coaches are after?
Is this one gonna, if I speak freely here, is this one gonna stay off the internet?
Yeah, this one can stay off the internet here. This will be
Okay.
just these. Well, I mean, the whole video is going on the
Yeah.
internet.
So that is the number one thing that puzzles my mind. You have these colleges that will not offer a guy that doesn't throw, a certain velocity. Last year for the Texas Rangers to win the 2023 World Series, our number one pitcher was Jordan Montgomery, who's a left-hander that's probably 93, touching 93 on his best day. So to me, pitchability and command is still very much a large part of this game. And I definitely think that pitchability and command for certain guys does conquer velocity when you're comparing them to other guys. Why do coaches not want to do that? I don't think it's as much coaches now at the college level. I'm not 100% sure. But from professional baseball, I mean, you've got money that's involved in guys, money that's invested in guys. You have players that have been paid, so many years for a contract, and their job is to pitch when the game's on the line or pitch in the biggest games essentially you're paying them to win those games. So, uh, you know, I think it all comes back to kind of a save face. Like, if you lose with the number one player in the country that throws 100 miles per hour, well, what else you can do? Where if you were to throw the other guy that necessarily doesn't have these tangible tools that you can see from a radar gun or from a TrackMan unit, then you're going to be questioned on what your move was. But pitchability is a thing, command is a thing. Those things are definitely going to be seen here in the upcoming years of professional baseball. I truly feel confident in that. And the velocity floor is becoming even. So, guys can only keep throwing harder until we figure out what the hardest of humans throws. And once it gets to that point, everyone's going to be back on the same playing field. And once it gets back to the same playing field, something else is going to have to separate you.
You heard it here first. Somebody will throw 110. I think that's where it caps out. It might be me.
Probably.
I might do
Yeah.
it. So you threw in junior year of college. I gotta throw it out there. You threw a 5.98 ERA junior.
Ugh.
Tough,
Yeah.
tough working. However, the following year, conference pitcher of the year, what clicked?
Um, yeah, that's got to be from Wise, right? Anyone that knows that ERA down to the dot. I would say this, two-part. One, having a 6 ERA, I mean, that was probably honestly some of the most embarrassed I've ever been. And you never want to say there was a moral victory, right? Like the job is to win the game. You're there to pitch well and you're there to win. Uh, but from a growth standpoint and a development standpoint, I actually thought my junior year was probably the biggest year for me in all of college. I thought I pitched really, really well into the fifth and sixth inning of some games that I just wasn't able to complete or wasn't able to, finish the job at the end. Uh, and I think the biggest thing that stuck out to me from that was, I was getting to a point where I was growing and it was kind of that plateau, right? Like you have your first big jump in velocity, you have your jump in pitchability, things are starting to click for you, but as far as the overall results, you're not getting what you're wanting. And it just it told me I had to take it to another level, and that's why I decided to go to summer school and stay there for the whole summer and work out versus playing summer ball, and devote all my time to training and devoting all my time to me growing as individually as a baseball player. Uh, and I think that ultimately led to my senior year was probably the most confident I had ever been for a full year on the mound. So, you know, I think it was a mix of developing and growing, which opened up my eyes to where I could take some steps in certain areas, sharpen up a breaking ball, utilize some of my secondary pitches a little bit more. But overall, I think it gave me the confidence that I did have the ability to do this at a high level, and I had the ability to be a great player. Now it was about putting those polishing touches on it.
And then it looks like this might be the last one here. If anybody has any more, put them in there. I might ask one more question myself. Um, but what throwing routine are you willing to share? Obviously, some of the information that the Rangers have, probably not giving that out. But overall, for high school, college, John, you asked this question. His guys are on a 5-day rotation. No, what are you guys on, a 6-day?
6 day.
Okay, so y'all might be in the same bucket here. Like, what are guys doing throughout their weeks after they get done pitching? What are they doing before? What is the throwing schedule look like for the majority of the guys?
What probably my favorite one and the most commonly used one, from college, playing, from coaching in college, and now in pro ball, is light, moderate, heavy. And your repeat. So light, moderate, heavy, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, light, moderate, heavy, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Uh, Now what that light, moderate, heavy is, if you're in that middle school age range, Daylight, you would know better about that from me. For a high school, college kid, I would probably look at light is 60 to 90 feet, moderate is 90 to 120, 150 feet, and then heavy is going to be your max long toss day, and probably only looking at pull downs on the day that you're doing your side. So if you pitched on a Friday, I would recommend
What's
doing
the side?
your bullpen. Um, Throwing your bullpen 2 or 3 days before your outing. And then, if you're worked up to that 60 plus, 80 plus pitch mark for your outing, probably throwing a 25 to 35 pitch bullpen So you long toss on that side day, get some pull downs on the way in, and then you long toss on your game day and get some pull downs on the way in. And then, you've got the ability to adjust on your light and moderate day. If you're a little bit sore after your side day, you can cut down on some of the throwing. If it's a day before the game and you're supposed to be at moderate, you can bring that back to, 75 feet and make it a little mix of light and moderate. But yeah, light, moderate, heavy. I almost look at throwing programs the same way I look at periodization with lifting. You would never want to max on back squat 2 days in a row. So if you just had a heavy day, take it light the next day, have an in-between day, and then go heavy again.
And then I'll add on to that from the lifting and pitching side. The biggest thing that I try to, hammer home with a lot of guys is keep your heavy days heavy. And so what I mean by that is, if you're already doing max output on the mound, that's probably the best day to do a max output in the gym. And I don't mean like max squat or max squat or whatever like that. I mean, like if you're gonna have a day in which you pitched as a high schooler or a college, like go ahead and get your lift in that day and then treat your day after like a true recovery day, not a day in which you have to get a ton of volume in the weight room going. So I like to pair those 2 days together as well. I don't know if that's something that you do, but I'll say that that's what,
With your plyos too. That's a great point. Yeah.
yeah. So keep your heavy days as heavy as possible on your heavy days, and everything else kind of keep, that in your back of your mind. And everything's always working up towards that heavy day. That heavy day is typically your game day as well. So like, when you're in season, I don't want to say nothing else really matters, but at the end of the day, like the only thing that matters is how you feel and how you get to that game and what result you put into that. And so whatever it takes to get to that ultimate end goal of feeling great on the mound, like that's the steps that you'll need to take. And so the next question is, do all of your pitchers have the same routine, or do you specialize for different guys?
No, I haven't had one guy in college or in professional baseball that had the same routine. Every single one of them is individualized. That's not only throwing, that's lifting, that is conditioning, that is nutrition. Every single thing they do, there's not many that do one thing is it alike. A lot of the tools that they use are very similar. Guys that use plyos, the core velo belt, a water ball, whatever it may be. But from drills, the way that they play catch, the distances that they play catch at, uh, guys that are lifting heavy in the weight room versus guys that are lifting light and working on moving really fast. Every single thing is individualized to them.
We had one more slide in here. What's something you do before a game to get in the right mindset as a player? Speak on that, and then what's some of the stuff that you've seen from some of your players now that are having success?
As a player, the biggest thing was I had a breathing routine. And so I'm not sure what the technical name of it was. I for some reason I want to say it was called a lemon breathing routine, but essentially it was like a 5 second inhale through the nose with a pause, and then you inhaled for 2 seconds, and then you exhaled as long as you could. And I would try to do that for 5 minutes. My biggest thing was just my heart rate wanted to go. And back when I was playing, it was a common thing to have a Red Bull or an energy drink before the game. So that probably was not the best thing to be doing for someone whose heart rate was going to rise anyways, or have adrenaline. But I was just trying to calm everything as much as I could. I wanted things to be quiet and things to be settled. Man, the things that I see guys do that's successful, I've seen anything from, the big thing right now is earthing. A lot of guys go outside with no shoes or socks and sit in the outfield, and some of them may do yoga, some of them just sit there and kind of be at peace and be in the moment. And then I had a lot of guys this past year that were big into meditating. So I'm not super well educated on meditation or what the benefits are of it. I assume that it would be back to, being calm and being at peace. But the overall kind of underlying theme of it all seems to be is quiet, calm, and peaceful. It's not trying to get worked up to run out of a football tunnel. Almost more, I would say it's probably you could probably find more people that get ready for a math test that's similar to how people get ready for a baseball game than you could in some other sports. So being quiet, calm, and collected.
Really great. Yeah, for those out there, I highly, highly recommend breathing and meditation of some sort. I'm big on yoga. I think yoga is a great place for me to like center my mind. I wish I would have done it more when I was playing. As like Thomas, I also bought into the energy drink and trying to get ramped up for the game because I felt like that was my best way to, create more adrenaline and velocity that I needed. And I couldn't have been more wrong. I wish I would have been more centered, more understanding of what my thoughts were at that time, and had a lot quieter mind as opposed to a mind that, was moving a million miles an hour. Because in the game, at the highest level, it just gets so fast and you have to have the ability to slow it down. And by putting excess caffeine into your body, like it just does the complete opposite. So highly recommend trying to figure out some form or fashion of slowing down your breathing, slowing down your thoughts, whatever that is for you. Is going to be different for everybody else, but try to figure that out. My last question here, and this is just me, is when it comes to, everybody wants to talk about like having a high IQ in baseball, and everybody wants to have a high IQ. Can you define what baseball IQ is, and then like how do players start to build that?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I would define it as instincts. It's almost having a guess at what's going to happen without necessarily, seeing it right in front of your face. It's the clues that tell you, to pick off here, to go to my slider here. How do you build those things? Uh, I think one, it just comes with being around the game as much as you can. It's not, again, it's not going to happen overnight. It's something that you've got to be involved in and paying attention to the game as much as possible. But it's I know this is pitching centered and I'm a pitching centered person as well, but the best pitchers I've ever had, I mean, I see them constantly talking to hitters. I see them constantly talking to the middle infielders. I see them constantly talking to the catchers. And so they're exposing themselves to all the elements of the game. And, when you think about it, I mean, I'll say confidently that pitching is the most important position on the field. Uh, in my opinion, you're the general. You control everything, and nothing can help it, and nothing can happen until you throw that ball. But when you have a holistic view of, I mean, I'll tell you this: for 2 years, I would turn around with no one on base or a runner on first, and I would see De La shift behind second base, and I'd always think to myself, "What in the world is this guy doing? Why? Like, what is he doing?" And then the ball would just be hit right there. And then, found out after 2 years that he knew all the signs that the catcher was putting down. And so when he saw something hard was coming, he was shifting to the opposite part of the field. And then when he saw something soft was coming, he was going to the pull side. Well, years later now as a coach, when I see that, I'm shaking to let's call a different pitch because they think that they've got something going on out there. And so, just exposing yourself to all aspects of the game. There's a million things going on in the game every single night that, we're unsure of why, or we probably don't know why. Ask questions, expose yourself as much as you can. But what is IQ? I mean, it's knowing the game. It's knowing how to play chess when other guys are playing checkers.
Great. This one's funny. I don't think we're gonna ask this one. I guess we'll leave with this one. Last one. I promise. Cord Butler, right here, your boy. How do you find that dog in you on the days that you don't have it or feel best? Is it more instinct?
100%. I mean, all the best players that I feel like I've been around, or at times when I felt like I was at my best, you do have that supreme confidence in yourself, and you do believe that no matter what, you're going to be able to figure it out and find a way. And so, back to your question on, pitch IQ, what is it when you're trying to, find it, or the instincts of it? Well, it's realizing I don't have my heater today. I'm going to rely on this pitch more, or realizing I don't have the ability to do this right now, but I have the ability to do this. So what can you do best in the moment? And I always think that the number one thing that any pitcher can do for themselves is you can know what your number one strength is, and when the game's on the line, hold your strength as high as you possibly can. And so when your back's against the wall, hold up the best version of yourself. If you throw hard, throw heaters. If your best pitch is slider, throw sliders uh, in that moment. But mentality and confidence, I mean, you could say that's what it boils down to at the end of the day, and you've got to have that confidence that you're going to figure it out or get the job done no matter what.
Man, this was great stuff here. I really, really appreciate it. I know that there was a ton of value that was shared. I'm sure a lot of these parents and players got a lot of stuff and information out of it. I want to thank everybody that came on to this call. We put these on for y'all so that y'all can get as much information as possible. If y'all have any other questions, feel free to reach out. But without further ado, that's Thomas St. Clair and his story. So appreciate y'all.